From Ticker, you're watching She's the Boss. Here's Jules Brooke.
Hi and welcome to She's the Boss, which is the show all about women in business and female founders. Basically all those women out there doing amazing things. And today I have two fabulous guests. I have Annette Densham, who used to be known as the Publicity Genie and is now working with the Audacious Agency, and Hayley Birtles-Eades, who has described herself to me as a professional attention seeker, which is something very close to my heart. So I'm dying to hear more about it. So welcome, ladies. Fantastic to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jules. I feel like I should be in the middle of the two attention seekers.
Hey, I'm the rose between the two thorns. Don't you take that away from me.
Right. Well, okay. Well, which leads me straight into, Hayley, can you tell me a little bit about what you actually do and why you do it? Because I'm sure that your actual job title is an attention seeker. What are you doing?
Look, I mean, the reason I describe myself is that I think it's... I get motivated by the funniest things, Jules. I got motivated by a bit of hate actually when I was a child, because I was always so hyperactive and so crazy and like a mile a minute. And people would always be saying in my reports, it's in my reports, I can prove it, but they would say she's an attention seeker. Yes. She needs to stop the attention seeking. And I was like, well, I'll show you. I'll turn this into a legitimate business. Right. And so literally, how do I take a perceived negativity and turn it into a positive? It's just through recognizing opportunity and getting mass amounts of attention to get things started. So I suppose I specialize in acceleration, really. That's what we do.
Yeah, which is great. But what businesses are you working on? I'm interested in the business side of you.
Yeah, so I mean, we started an agency called Be Inc. And Be Inc. is behind quite a few different concepts, brands. We've worked with all sorts of different clients and come in at all different stages.
Marketing agency? Sorry, is it a marketing agency?
Well, sort of, yeah, kind of. It's kind of more like of an agency of it's what we don't we do as opposed to what we do. We do lots of different things, anywhere from events procurement to celebrity procurement to events management, graphic design. We come up concepts and then we make them happen. I was literally on an interview before this and a lady said that, there's plenty of people that have ideas. We're the people that get them.
Okay,
so
great.
Got that, and we've got Obsessed Hub that we've just started as well with this amazing, that way, is it this way? That way. This amazing lady over here. And
yes, Yes, I know you've both been doing that and I've been watching you, so I'm dying to hear a bit more about that as well. Let me just move on now to Annette. I have known you for a long time because you've been doing PR like I have with small business owners, but tell me, what are you doing these days and why are you doing it?
Well, these days I've put aside my genie bottle,
yes.
Probably because I don't fit into it anymore after coronavirus.
That's a thing we can all talk about, being chunky.
I needed to upgrade to a genie bucket, but I put away my genie bottle, and I'm working with Lauren Clement in the Audacious Agency, and we are self-promotion specialists. So what we do is we work with people to find their stories, find their audience, and then help push them out on the platform so that they become well-known, well-paid and wanted. And we primarily do that through PR strategies, but also through entering awards, writing books, any of those things that help them become attention seekers.
So that's a terrific idea, because so many women are really scared about pushing themselves out there. I think because they feel, that they're going to get knocked if they are out there, but to be able to go to someone like you and actually be able to get help applying for awards, to get reassurance and sort of positioning is just really useful, I would have thought.
Oh, absolutely. And look, and I know firsthand, because when I started my business 8 years ago, I had absolutely no idea how to promote myself because I'd come from a corporate background. Right. And I was the person in the background making other people look good. It was never about me. But in small business, it's got to be about you, and you've got to be able to push yourself out there and tell your story. And I guess that's my why, because I've been that person. I know how hard it can be. I know how challenging it can be. So I just want to help people push themselves out there.
Yeah, and you're doing a terrific job with it. I certainly on LinkedIn have seen you accepting awards in New York with some Australian business owners. So you're doing a terrific thing.
Thank you.
Okay, so girls, now, just before, as we started closing down for the COVID, you girls got together and started a Facebook page called The Obsessed Hub, I think it is, and the other one is Being Obsessed. But tell me a bit about it. Let me start with you, Hayley. Can you tell me a little bit about why you even started it and what it all stands for?
Annette and I actually came up with the concept quite some time ago, like probably maybe 2 years, was it, Annette?
Right.
Something like that?
Yep.
Something like those lines. And the concept's been floating around for a little while, but as with anything, when it comes to starting anything, timing is crucial.
Yep.
And sometimes you can have these really cool ideas, but you've really got to have a look at the environment and see whether people want it and whether they're ready, and if you've actually got a position that you can slot into. So
Yeah.
again, that's part of, I suppose, what we do.
The strategy, yeah.
It's the strategy, because you can't just, I mean, with anything that you do, you can't just come up with something and just bang it out there. Sometimes you can.
But
in
more
most
often than
cases-
not, you actually have to plan it and find that slot.
100%. That's exactly correct.
So 2 years go past and suddenly the country goes into lockdown and you guys went, now's the time.
That's exactly. I walked into the office. I've got goosebumps. I walked into the office and I said to one of our head graphic designer, "Now we go now."
Right.
And she's like, "Wait, what?" She'd already said, "Look, we need to just start a group with it." And I was like, "Oh, not yet, not yet." And within a few days, I walked in and said, "Here we go. Let's rock and roll."
So what does it stand for though? Why have you started it?
It's just that, I mean, basically we've taken macro groups, and I look at Facebook land and social media as macro.
Yeah.
So micro groups, lots of micro groups all over the place, and we're like the super group for all the groups. Especially I suppose it came from when I was a kid and I was floating around in high school, not really kind of fitting in anywhere. And there's more and more of us that are coming out of the woodwork, as you know, the weirdos and the creatives. And we really wanted to create a space where you could just be free to be yourself and celebrate it. And ultimately and it's okay to have the hard conversations, but a beautiful, respectful space. So we haven't had any dramas at all in there. We've had a couple of people step out of line, but it's so lovely to be able to watch all of these people come together and have a beautiful space.
Well, you keep cutting in and out. Go on.
Sorry?
No, I was just saying the sound was doing something funny. So I might just move over to Annette to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing. So one of the things I know you're doing on there is regular video interviews. And who are you doing those with and why and how's all that working?
Oh, look, anybody and everybody, because as Hayley said, Obsessed With is a place for everybody to come and share their loves, their obsessions, their talents, their ideas, their thoughts. It's not a business group, it's a human group.
Yeah.
And we really encourage people to share their stories, because I don't know if you watched Afterlife with Ricky Gervais.
I have.
But there's a scene in there where he's just interviewed someone about the kookiest thing, and he's turned to the photographer and he said, "You know, I think everybody deserves to be in the paper. Everyone's got a story to tell." And that's this place we're filling, because there are so many awesome stories out there that never get told because, you know, the big newspapers don't want to hear them, or they don't quite fit the niche of someone's podcast.
Yeah.
So we go, come and share with us, and it can be random from, you know, Hayley's interviewing a woman tomorrow who's a cannabis queen, all the way through to, you know, the amazing host of a TV show called She's the Boss.
Yeah, well, look, you have a big, wide variety, and I agree with you that I think right now it's the perfect time to just bring people together who want to be together. It doesn't have to have a theme. It doesn't have to have an agenda. It's just about connecting, and I think you're doing a terrific job. And I mean, the numbers are pretty high already. You've had a couple of thousand at least join up, haven't you?
Yeah, look, every day.
It's crazy, and it's not so much the numbers, right? And like, it's not looking at the numbers. What's important is the quality of the engagement. And if your engagement is good, the numbers don't matter. And look, we had a massive spike in the beginning, but what's really important is looking at those numbers that are slowly, organically creeping up. Correct,
Yeah.
but our engagement. If you look on the back end of our engagement, it is
Off the charts. I can see, I know when I see you post up questions and it gets, 139 comments that that it's working really well. So congratulations on starting that. That's fantastic. Now I want to take you back a little bit to where your career started, which it sounds to me, Hayley, with you it started back in primary school. But when you did get started, how have you managed to end up where you are now? What has been the wiggly journey that has taken you to running Be Inc. and then to starting Obsessed Hub?
Well, I was an early school leaver. I didn't finish school. I didn't really like school. I was
Yeah.
like the misfit and a person that was always at home making things, doing things. Back then, I was actually quite a lonely child because I used to get picked on a lot. And so I was bullied quite severely as a child. So because of that, I would go inward and go home and kind of like make beads or, create things. And then I would take those things to school and I would sell them to the people that was bullying me. And I felt so great about taking money off those people. It was bad.
And that took you through into adulthood. No, I'm joking.
Well, the thing is, I've tried everything. Like I've tried so many different things: hairdressing, selling shoes, bar work. I've done I've had such a wide, varied
Career.
experience. Yeah, and the saying.
And then on top of that, I can hear from the accent. I don't think you started off in Australia either, did you?
No, we came to Australia when I was 13 years old. And
really? Same as me. I came when I was 12. There you go.
Yeah. And we didn't have a fun time when we came, unfortunately. So I ended up not finishing school. And this is where the important thing is where I learned what true work ethic was. And I was earning money at the age of 13 to support my entire family.
Wow.
So,
huge.
Yeah. Yep. Supermarket job after school, kind of having to watch the money. I'm super resilient, and I get asked a lot about why I'm so resilient, and it's because I've had so much adversity.
Yeah.
And never one to kind of sit and do the victim kind of mentality vibe. And I've always just banked it up. I bank up my adversity, and then it turns into resilience.
That's fantastic. That is just what a great tip. That's really good. So Annette, tell me a little bit more about you, because I know you started off your career. I think you started off your career as a journalist. But can you run us through the journey for you from sort of, let's say, finishing school or that kind of thing through to now, and how that journey has looked?
Oh, absolutely. I was like Hayley. I was picked on at school, and I took refuge in the school library, and that was my favourite place to be. And I had always had a love of words, and I love reading, and I love writing. And so, when you're about 10 or 11, people start asking you, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Yes.
And my mum wanted me to be a doctor because we were so poor, and she thought if I was a doctor that, I'd be rich and I'd never have to worry.
Right.
But I was like, I'm really not very good at maths or science, so that kind of blows that idea out the water. So I decided I was going to be a journalist. So everything that I did towards my schooling, minus a few hiccups in grade 11 where I did WAG most of grade 11, I had to go back and repeat it because I stayed home watching Days of Our Lives and smoking cigarettes.
Oh, dear.
But, I was a naughty kid. I'm still a naughty kid. Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing I'm noticing. Both of you were bullied. Both of you have learned resilience from it, and now both of you are working together. But sorry, go on. Keep going. So
absolutely. Like minds are attracted.
That's right. So you left school. You went off to do journalism.
I left school. I started working for, at the time it was John Fairfax and Sons, and that's when I wrote my very first article with my own byline, all about golf courses down the Gold Coast.
As you do.
And it was like, I'm hooked. This is great. I moved to Sydney and, worked for the other big newspaper house, but I never really kind of fit in because I don't have a propensity to kiss the right rear ends. So the people who always seem to be moving up were the ones who followed the rules and, put up with the abuse that you often copped as a young person in a newspaper office. Yeah. So I left. I totally abandoned my media career for about 4 years. I went and worked with people with disabilities because I just felt like I really needed to give back, and I got a postgrad in special education, which comes
Right.
in handy with a child with autism. And then I just went, I miss this journalism thing. I just love talking to people, finding their stories. And I got a job with the senior newspaper, and I worked for them for around 7 years until I went in. I'm going to go get a corporate job now. That'll be fun.
Whoa, big
So
change. And for somebody
big
who doesn't
change.
like following the rules.
Well, and it was funny because I went and worked for Christian not-for-profit organisations, and
Right.
that was an eye-opener.
That would have been challenging.
I think that sometimes as a non-Christian, I was the most Christian person in the room. It was like it totally blew my mind.
Right.
But it just reinforced that I just loved stories. So I worked in comms roles. So when my last corporate job went, thanks, Annette, but no thanks, we'll see you later, I started my business and have just been slowly falling forward for the last
then.
8 years.
And you've just recently had a chapter in a book. I noticed on LinkedIn there's a book fly. What's the name of the book that you've got a chapter in?
I Fly, Stories of Overcoming Adversity.
Yeah, great.
It's a bestseller on Amazon. Even before it was launched, it just
That's
sold
amazing,
something
isn't it?
like 300 copies. Oh, it was mind-blowing. And at the moment, I'm on sabbatical and I'm writing my memoirs. Darling, don't you know? I'm writing my memoirs.
As you do.
As you do, yes. Like I'm sure I've got a few good years left, but there's a lot of stuff that happened to me before I was 25 that I thought, I'm ready to tell people that story now, and maybe it'll inspire somebody.
Well, I'm sure it will. I mean, always, if you are stuck in a terrible situation, or even you're just stuck mentally and you're just thinking, I don't know what to do, learning from other people is really the best way, I think. And it's very motivating, and it's also kind of believable because you've seen somebody has done it and come out the other end, which is a perfect segue for me to start talking with both of you about what you've learned along the way, because there is nothing like hearing a bit of a struggle to success story to get people going. And I know both of you have had lots of adversity. So can you give me an example, Hayley, of something that happened to you and how you managed to get out of it, or how you managed to keep going?
There's so many.
I know, you've got to pick one.
Let me count the ways.
Which one?
I'll chop and change. You'll probably get two, but let's start with one.
I got into a very heavy legal battle with a very huge entity, way more money, way more power than I think the entire country, to be honest.
Right.
And I took them on, and I basically they had said something that wasn't true about my business, and I take great offence because I put my heart and my soul into everything I do, not only for myself but for everything else. So, and I went into defence mode. Now, looking back in hindsight's a beautiful thing. Would I get asked, would I do the same thing again? Knowing what I know now, I probably would have taken all that passion, all of that energy, and all of that enthusiasm that I had while the business was doing so many great things, instead of actually going in to say, that wasn't right, I probably should have focused all that energy into the business and actually re-strategizing, repositioning and remarketing the business, as opposed to fighting someone that I knew I was up against the wall.
But I do think sometimes there's just the principle. I had something similar happen to me when I was my first business ever. I had a massive disaster that happened straight away. And I do think that you learn from it and you just kind of go, you say you wish you'd done it differently, but I reckon even if you went back and the same thing happened now, you'd still champion you'd stand your ground, because you've got to.
I would, but I'd do it differently. And I can tell you the one thing, and this is, even though I lost, by the way, I lost.
Right.
It was a 5-year court case. We ended up losing.
Right.
We almost won, all bar 1 point overturned, but, almost winning's not a win, right?
Yeah.
How I did win, and this is part of it, is looking for the nuggets of gold and the lessons, right?
Yeah.
I got to hang out with some of the country's greatest defamation lawyers. I was in my element watching these lawyers go back. I felt like I was in an episode of Law and Order.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. The amount of information, and God help anybody who comes up against me that's kind of like anything less than the Supreme Court. because I do go into obsession mode. I get
Right.
obsessed with what I'm actually doing, no matter what I'm doing,
Right.
right? And if it's fighting against something, I pour my all into it. If it's creating something, I pour my all into it. So I have to kind of like bounce through different tasks. But the one thing that I learned was how, lots of things, but when to know, when to recognize, sorry, that you shouldn't always go at it like a dog at a bone. And that takes, I think, maturity, looking
Yeah.
at something that, and being able to look back and go, you know what, I really effed that up. I effed it up and I shouldn't have actually gone down that path and done it that way. And it's not that I wouldn't do it the same way again, because I've got a lot of great things out of it. But
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with being able to look back on something and go, I was an idiot. I shouldn't have done it that
Yeah,
way.
no, absolutely, absolutely.
Ego.
And I mean that's the great learning I think that also comes with age and experience, is being able to look back and going, whoops, shouldn't have done that. But you don't let it freeze you. You just go, okay, that was a big mistake, but it's time for me to move on.
Well, there's ways to do it, Jules, now. Like, I mean, would I have engaged all the lawyers? And I'm not joking, we had a suite of lawyers, barristers, cute, like crazy, right?
Right.
And that's me, because I'm all or nothing.
Right.
But there's now, with all of that knowledge, I would advise other people to do it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Well, that's great advice. So now you think of another one, because I'm going to go to Annette and say, Annette, is there something that you have learned along your journey that we could share, or that you're happy to share, and we can share it with our audience, see if there's some way that they can learn from it as well?
Absolutely. When I touched on it before, when my last corporate role decided that it was done with me,
Yeah.
it had been a very exciting time. I was headhunted. I was offered this amazing greenfields role. It's like, come here. It was really exciting. And I'd only been back in the workforce for maybe 4 years after being home with children for 10.
Yeah,
So I'm
right.
like, yeah, baby, I still got it. And then less than a year later, I'm walked out of the office with my cardboard box like
What
I'm some
happened?
type
I mean,
of
was it a disagreement, or was it
financial restructuring.
restructuring? Okay.
Yeah,
So no fault of
financial
your own, just like so many people at the moment, just your job's finished.
Yeah, and at the time, the Queensland government had just like massacred the public service. There was like
Right.
12,000 redundancies. So here's me, this little fish in a big pond at 43 going, who's going to want me? Like, I'm a has-been, I'm done. And a friend of mine invited me to go along to a seminar with a guy who was teaching people how to do webinars. And I'm like, that sounds dumb. Okay,
Yeah.
but I'll go. So I went, and he picked me as the guinea pig to get up and tell people how to use PR to get publicity.
Oh my
for their
God, how
business.
spooky is that?
I know. I walked away that weekend with $5,000 in my bank account
Wow.
from creating this, I think I called it public relations mastery program.
Right.
And, here's the 5 steps to do your own PR. And I had this reaffirmation that, no, I did have value, and that
And
all
there
of the
was some
things
passion
that,
in there for it as well. The storytelling, I bet, sort of rose up through that as
absolutely.
well. Yeah.
But I also realised that I was an expert at something, and I'd always had that unconscious competence of my skills and my expertise, kind of thinking, well, everyone can do this, can't they? Like, surely everyone can
So
write an
common.
article or,
It's
yeah,
so common for
absolutely.
people to think that. I mean, you just hear it all the time. Rather than kind of go, well, actually, in my little corner, I know more than if I would say to people, if you go out to a barbecue and somebody asks you something and you're able to answer it, then already you're an expert, and you're answering things people know. But I love it that you were doing that. Okay, back to Hayley. Hayley, can you tell me, are there any tips that you could offer business owners, particularly women that might be either thinking of starting their own business or have it and want to grow it? Any tips along the way that you've learned that you could pass on to them?
Yeah, plenty. Everything. Every time I talk to people about anything to do with business, it all comes down to relationships and communication.
Right.
It is so important to build good quality relationships and resist the urge to sell to people.
Yeah.
Go back to the old school customer service. be a good person. Don't be an asshole. Make sure that when you are having an interaction with someone, that you are hyper aware of how you're making people feel. When you
Yeah.
do that, you're taking yourself out of the equation. And if you are just in complete and utter service to the people that you're trying to help, because most businesses are started from a need, right?
Yeah.
So a need, or solving a problem, or solving your own problem, and then obviously you figured out that that other people have the same problem, you're going to solve it. Yes, okay, you may have your own kind of like financial needs and everything else, but if you make it about the money, you focus on the money, it
Yeah.
just
Won't go
come.
anywhere.
You've really, really, really got to be in true and utter service. And if you don't know what that looks like, it is as simple as giving without expectation. And
That's
that's
true,
really
but
hard.
that's true. But one of the things that I often think is that with women, sales becomes a dirty word. So I think what you're saying as well, and that it's important for women and for everyone, but if you've got a business and you're able to help people, then don't think of it as sales, think of it as helping people. And then you can stay in that service, full service mode that you're talking about, because your products can help people as well, or your service.
Correct. I mean, comes down. This is not rocket science shit, right? Like, it's literally not. Like,
Yeah.
know, like, and trust somebody. It comes from spending time and having an interaction. And I liken it to kind of dating. Like,
Yeah.
I know that with this fast-paced environment right now, you kind of like, you jump straight in bed with someone, but you shouldn't do the same thing either. Like, especially with businesses, you can take the time to get to know whether you actually want to
That's
work with
right.
these clients.
Baby
And if
steps.
you make this is it. And if you're making rush decisions to kind of jump into bed with your clients, you could land yourself in hot water and end up working with a client that you actually don't want, and they end up sucking the life out of you. And
Very
and
true.
you usually make those decisions based on the dollars. So
Well,
don't
that's right.
focus.
But I think one of the great things about working for yourself, and my business partner many years ago said it to me, and I thought it was really right on, is that basically if you're working for yourself, then you get to choose who you work with. And if it's somebody that you don't like, you don't have to work with them. So one of the
Right.
many benefits of working for yourself, I would say. Now, Annette, have you got a quick tip that you can share with us as well? Something that you think would be maybe something that you wish someone would have said to you at the beginning of your career?
There's no room in business for modesty. Like,
What do you
if
mean by
you're
that?
not sharing your story, if you're not putting yourself out there, nobody else is going to do it for you. There is no magical marketing fairy. There is no silver bullet. There's no magic mushrooms. There's no super secret. It's you believing in what you do and opening your mouth, putting your fingers to keyboards and telling people about it.
Yeah.
And there's a way that you can do that without being wanky and egotistical and going, oh, wow, look at me. And it encapsulates what Hayley just said about
Yes.
giving and about, not doing it just for the money. That if you let people get to know you, if you show them what you're made of, then your customers will come because they will know, they will like you, and they will trust you.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely spot on. Well, listen, girls, you won't believe it, but we're at the end of the program, so thank you so much for coming. Can I just ask both of you how people can find you, other than obviously Obsessed on Facebook? But if people wanted to engage you or work with you, Hayley, how would they get hold of you? What's the best way?
It would be through www.beinc, and that's
Yep.
BE and then inc.com.au.
Fan-
They can go there. They can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, all over the shop. So
Great,
yeah, I'm,
great.
I'm, I'm Googleable.
Thank you so much for coming. And Annette, how can people find you?
Well, I've coined a new phrase. I don't know if it's new or I've just decided to own it,
Yes,
but I'm Googleicious. Google loves me. So if you
great.
put Annette
Densham,
Densham in Google, you'll
they'll
find me,
find
or
you.
go to
All right.
theaudaciousagency.com.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining me today. For anybody that has enjoyed the show and would like to see more, we have a show every week. You can also download the app from the App Store, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Introducing Ticker Sport.
Mate, how exciting is it to kick off Ticker Sport?
Mate, I'm as pumped as you, which is pretty pumped. We're here to talk sport, business, there's a market, there's a niche.
It's David Davidovich and Adrian Franklin tackling the biggest issues.
Mate, we're talking sport, but we're talking business as well. And as you know, right now, there is no more important time. The world has changed and we are here to react.
Where nothing's off limits.
This is unprecedented.